Marcus Cole sat on his old couch, staring at the pile of bills on the coffee table. The rent notice was bright red, and the electricity company had sent their final warning 3 days ago. His left leg ached from the old war wound, and the pills the doctor gave him barely helped anymore. The apartment was small, and the walls were thin enough that he could hear his neighbor's television through the night. The war had ended 2 years ago, but Marcus felt like he was still fighting it every day. He had served in humanity's first real space battle against the aliens from the Veltar Empire. The doctor said his mind was damaged from what he saw out there, but Marcus knew the truth. He remembered everything perfectly, and that was the real problem. Sleep came hard most nights, and when it did come, the dreams were always the same. Rain hammered against his window as Marcus counted the money in his wallet for the third time. $18.40. His military pension check would not come for another week, and his fridge held nothing but a half-empty carton of milk and some leftover takeout that smelled questionable. He had already sold his television and most of his furniture just to keep the lights on. The knock on his door came just after noon, and it was not the soft tap of his elderly neighbor asking to borrow sugar. This was heavy and official, sounding like the police or maybe debt collectors. Marcus limped to the door, using his walking stick, and looked through the peephole. What he saw made him step back in surprise. 3 aliens stood in the hallway, wearing formal robes that looked expensive. They were tall and thin with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Marcus recognized them as Veltar, but he had never seen any on Earth before. The one in front held what looked like an official document and waited patiently while rain dripped from their robes. Marcus opened the door, but kept the chain lock attached. The lead alien spoke in perfect English with only a slight accent that made their words sound musical. "Are you Marcus Cole, who served in the Terran Defense Forces during the conflict of 2387? "Yeah, that's me. What do you want?" "We represent the legal estate of His Majesty King Thelvor of the Veltar Empire. We have traveled far to speak with you about a matter of inheritance." Marcus almost laughed. The whole situation felt like some kind of sick joke. Here he was about to be evicted from his crappy apartment, and aliens were talking about inheritance. He unhooked the chain and opened the door fully. "You better come in before my neighbors start taking pictures." The 3 aliens entered and stood awkwardly in his small living room. They were even taller inside and had to duck slightly to avoid hitting the ceiling fan. The lead alien continued speaking while the other 2 remained silent and watchful. King Thelvor died 3 weeks ago from natural causes. Before his death, he updated his will to include several beings from other species who had shown him kindness during his life. Your name was among them. Marcus sat down heavily on his couch. He barely remembered King Thelvor, and certainly had no idea why the alien ruler would leave him anything. During the war, Marcus had been part of a prisoner exchange mission where several captured Veltar officers were returned to their people. He remembered refusing orders to execute the prisoners and helping to negotiate their safe return, but that was just doing his job. "I don't understand. I barely knew your king." King Thelvor wrote in his personal notes that you showed mercy when others would have chosen violence. You treated captured Veltar soldiers with dignity and respect, even though your own people had suffered losses. This act of compassion left a deep impression on him. The second alien stepped forward and placed a small device on Marcus's coffee table. It projected a holographic image that showed legal documents written in both alien script and English. Marcus could see his name clearly listed along with several other beings from different species. What exactly did he leave me? The 3 aliens exchanged glances, and Marcus could tell they were not happy about whatever they had to tell him. The lead alien cleared his throat, which sounded like wind blowing through metal pipes. "His Majesty left you ownership of a creature from his private collection. The being is called Uzra and is classified as a dragon in our language, though we understand humans use different terms for such creatures." Marcus felt confused. He had heard that wealthy aliens sometimes kept exotic pets, but he could not imagine why anyone would give him such a responsibility. He could barely feed himself, let alone take care of some alien animal. "I can't take care of a pet. Look around this place. I can barely pay rent." The creature is not exactly a pet in the way humans understand them. Dragons in our culture are used primarily for labor and transportation. They are sturdy and require little maintenance. However, we must warn you that this particular dragon is considered defective by our people. Defective how? The third alien spoke for the first time, and their voice carried a tone of distaste. Uzra displays behavioral anomalies that make him unsuitable for normal dragon work. He is stubborn and uncooperative. King Thelvor was the only one who could manage him, and even then the dragon caused numerous problems. We strongly advise you to sell him immediately to recover his material value. Marcus looked at the legal documents again. Even if this dragon was difficult to handle, it had to be worth something. Maybe enough to pay his bills and get back on his feet. Where's this dragon now? He is being held in a cargo ship in your planet's orbit. We can arrange for immediate transfer to your location if you accept the inheritance. However, once you take ownership, we cannot take him back under any circumstances. Marcus thought about his options. He was already facing eviction and had no other prospect for income. At worst, he could sell the dragon to someone who knew how to handle such creatures. At best, maybe the alien was valuable enough to solve his money problems permanently. All right, I'll take him. The alien seemed relieved and quickly began preparing the transfer documents. Within an hour, a large alien transport ship landed in the empty lot behind Marcus's apartment building. Several Veltar workers used anti-gravity lifts to move a massive container from the ship to the ground level. The container was made of some kind of dark metal and was easily the size of a small truck. Strange symbols glowed along its sides, and Marcus could hear something moving inside. The workers connected power cables to the container and activated what looked like a control panel. The dragon is in hibernation mode for transport safety. Once we activate the revival sequence, he will wake up within a few minutes. Are you prepared? Marcus nodded, even though he felt anything but prepared. The lead alien pressed several buttons on the control panel, and the container began to hum with energy. Slowly, the sides folded outward like the petals of a metal flower, revealing what was inside. The dragon was nothing like Marcus had expected. Instead of scales, it had skin that looked like living crystal that reflected light in rainbow patterns. It was roughly the size of a horse, but built more like a large cat with powerful muscles visible beneath the translucent skin. Its head was elegant and intelligent, looking with large eyes that remained closed during the revival process. He will be fully conscious in approximately 2 minutes. We will leave as soon as he awakens. Marcus watched as the dragon's breathing became stronger and more regular. Its crystalline skin began to pulse with soft light that grew brighter as it returned to consciousness. Finally, the creature opened its eyes, which were a deep purple color that seemed to hold depths Marcus could not fathom. The dragon looked around slowly, taking in its surroundings. It saw the Veltar workers, and its expression became wary and defensive. Then its gaze fell on Marcus, and something changed in those purple eyes. They studied him with an intelligence that made Marcus uncomfortable. Then the dragon spoke, and Marcus felt his world shift completely. Well, this is unexpected. A human. And here I thought my day couldn't get any stranger. The voice was completely human, sounding with no accent or alien quality to it. It sounded like a middle-aged man who was tired and slightly amused by life's absurdities. The Veltar workers stepped backward in shock and began speaking rapidly in their own language. Marcus stared at the dragon in complete disbelief. In all his research about alien species, he had never heard of any creature that could speak human languages so perfectly. The dragon noticed his expression, and what might have been a smile crossed its features. I know what you're thinking. Dragons aren't supposed to talk. Trust me, the feeling is mutual. I never expected to end up with a human either, but here we are. The lead Veltar worker approached Marcus with obvious distress. This is most unusual. Dragons do not speak in any language. There must be some kind of technological interference. Uzra turned toward the alien, and when he spoke, his voice carried a tone of cold contempt. There's no interference, you ignorant fool. I've always been able to speak. I just never saw any point in talking to you people. The alien workers quickly finished their tasks and prepared to leave. They clearly wanted nothing more to do with the talking dragon, and Marcus could hardly blame them. Before departing, the lead alien handed Marcus a data pad with care instructions and contact information. The dragon is now your responsibility. We wish you success in managing him. The transport ship lifted off and disappeared into the cloudy sky, leaving Marcus alone with his inheritance. He looked at Uzra, who was stretching and examining his new surroundings with curious eyes. "So what now?" Marcus asked. Uzra looked at him with those intelligent purple eyes, and Marcus could swear he saw understanding there. "Now we figure out how to make this work. You're obviously in need of help, and I've been looking for someone who might treat me like something more than a piece of equipment. Maybe we can help each other." Marcus nodded slowly. His life had just become infinitely more complicated, but for the first time in months, he felt something that might have been hope. Marcus spent the first night lying awake on his couch listening to Uzra move around in the small apartment. The dragon was surprisingly quiet for something so large, but Marcus could hear the soft sound of crystalline skin touching furniture and walls. Every few hours, Uzra would make a comment about something he found interesting, like the microwave or the broken television Marcus had forgotten to throw away. "Your species has an odd relationship with time," Uzra said around 3 a.m. "You build devices to heat food instantly, but then you create entertainment that requires hours to consume." Marcus rolled over and looked at the dragon, who was examining his small bookshelf with careful attention. In the dim light from the street lamp outside, Uzra's skin glowed with a soft purple radiance that was actually quite beautiful. "Can't you sleep?" "My people don't require sleep the way humans do. We rest, but we remain aware of our surroundings. It's a survival trait from when we were free." The word "free" hung in the air between them, and Marcus realized there was much more to Uzra's story than he understood. He sat up on the couch and winced as his injured leg protested the movement. "What do you mean when you were free?" Uzra had turned from the bookshelf, and his purple eyes reflected the streetlight like mirrors. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight of sadness that made Marcus think of his own war memories. "My people weren't always slave, Marcus. Long before your species learned to make fire, we built cities among the stars. We created technologies that the current galactic powers still don't fully understand. But we were peaceful, and that made us vulnerable." Marcus listened as Uzra explained how his species had been conquered and enslaved over thousands of years. The Veltar and other alien races had captured them and bred them like animals until most dragons lost their intelligence and became nothing more than living tools. "How did you keep your mind?" "Luck mostly. Some of us are born with stronger mental resistance to the conditioning they use. We learn early to hide our intelligence, or we end up in laboratories being studied until we die." The next morning, Marcus woke to the smell of coffee and found that Uzra had somehow figured out how to use the coffee maker. The dragon's crystalline fingers were surprisingly dexterous, and he had even managed to find the sugar packets Marcus had forgotten he owned. "I studied your planet's broadcast for years while I was trapped in the royal collection," Uzra explained as he handed Marcus a steaming cup. "Your species has fascinating social customs around food preparation and consumption." Marcus took a sip and was amazed to find that it was perfectly made, better than any coffee he had made for himself in months. "You learned to make coffee from watching television?" "Television, internet transmissions, radio broadcasts. King Thelvor's palace had equipment that could intercept signals from across the galaxy. I spent decades learning about hundreds of different species, but humans were always the most interesting." "Why?" Uzra settled his large frame carefully on the floor next to Marcus's couch. His movements were graceful despite his size, and Marcus noticed that he was careful not to damage anything in the small apartment. "Because you're unpredictable. Most species follow patterns that can be calculated and predicted, but humans do things that make no logical sense, and somehow they work. Like when you refuse to execute those Veltar prisoners during the war." Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. He had never told anyone the details of that mission, and the official reports had been classified. "How do you know about that?" "King Thelvor talked about it constantly. He said it was the first time in his life that an enemy had shown mercy without expecting anything in return. It changed how he thought about your species." Marcus felt uncomfortable discussing his wartime actions. He had done what felt right at the time, but the decision had cost him his military career and led to the injuries that left him disabled. "I just couldn't kill defenseless prisoners. It wouldn't have been right." "Exactly. That's what made it remarkable. Any other species would have calculated the strategic value of showing mercy or the political benefits of prisoner exchange. But you acted purely on principle, even though it cost you personally." Over the following days, Marcus learned that Uzra possessed knowledge about technology that went far beyond anything humans had developed. The dragon could interface with electronic devices by touching them with his crystalline skin and somehow understand how they worked instantly. Your computer is infected with 17 different types of malware, Uzra announced while touching Marcus's old laptop. Give me a few minutes and I can clean it up and improve its performance significantly. Marcus watched in fascination as Uzra's skin began to glow brighter and the laptop screen filled with scrolling code that moved too fast for human eyes to follow. Within 10 minutes, the ancient machine was running faster than it had when Marcus first bought it. How did you do that? My people evolved the ability to interface with crystalline matrices for data storage and computation. Most modern technology is based on principles we developed millions of years ago. The irony is that our captors use our own innovations to keep us enslaved. Marcus realized that Uzra represented an incredible opportunity. If the dragon could repair and improve electronic devices, they could start a small business fixing computers and phones for people in the neighborhood. It wouldn't make them rich, but it might be enough to pay the bills and keep them fed. Would you be willing to help me start a repair business? Uzra's eyes brightened with what Marcus was learning to recognize as enthusiasm. I would enjoy having purposeful work again. It's been centuries since I was allowed to use my abilities for anything constructive. They started small with Marcus posting advertisements on local community boards, offering cheap computer repair services. Word spread quickly that there was someone in the neighborhood who could fix anything electronic, and soon they had more work than Marcus could handle alone. Uzra proved to be not only skilled with technology, but also surprisingly good with customers. He remained hidden in the back room while Marcus dealt with people directly, but he could diagnose problems instantly and often suggest improvements that customers hadn't even asked for. Tell Mrs. Henderson that her tablet doesn't just need a new battery, Uzra called from the back room. The charging port is also damaged and will fail completely within 2 weeks. I can fix both problems for the same price as just replacing the battery. Marcus found himself genuinely enjoying work for the first time since leaving the military. Having a partner who understood technology so completely made every job feel like solving an interesting puzzle rather than a frustrating battle with broken devices. Their success attracted attention from other sources as well. After 3 weeks of steady business, Marcus noticed that several customers seemed more interested in asking questions about his background than getting their devices repaired. One man claimed his phone was broken, but it worked perfectly when Uzra examined it. "We're being watched," Uzra confirmed one evening as they counted the day's earnings. "Some of your visitors today were carrying concealed recording devices, and at least 2 had weapons." Marcus felt his old military instincts awakening. During the war, he had learned to recognize when situations were becoming dangerous, and every sign pointed to trouble approaching. "Who do you think it is?" "Could be anyone. The Veltar government is probably tracking me, and your own authorities might be curious about how you acquired alien technology. Or it could be criminals who think we have something valuable to steal." That night, Marcus dreamed about the war again, but this time the dreams were different. Instead of feeling helpless and trapped, he found himself planning defensive strategies and escape routes. Having Uzra as a partner had given him something worth protecting, and that changed everything. The attack came 2 days later, just as Marcus was closing the shop for the evening. 3 Veltar soldiers in combat armor materialized in the alley behind his building using some kind of stealth technology. They moved with military precision and carried weapons that hummed with dangerous energy. Marcus recognized the lead soldier from his time as a prisoner during the war. The alien had been one of the officers he had helped return safely to their people, but there was no gratitude in those cold eyes now. "Marcus Cole, you are in possession of stolen Veltar property. Surrender the dragon immediately, and you will not be harmed." Marcus positioned himself between the soldiers and the back door of his shop, where Uzra was waiting. "Uzra isn't property. He was legally given to me by your own king." King Thelvor exceeded his authority. "Dragons cannot be owned by non-Veltar beings. We are here to correct this mistake." The soldier raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Uzra burst through the back door of the shop. The dragon's crystalline skin was blazing with brilliant light, and when he spoke his voice carried a tone of ancient fury. "I am Uzra of the Nethera, and I am no one's property. Leave this place or face the consequences. The soldiers opened fire, but their energy weapons simply bounced off Uzra's crystalline hide like light reflecting from a mirror. The dragon reared up to his full height, and Marcus could feel electricity building in the air around them. Get behind me, Marcus. This is about to get interesting. Uzra's skin pulsed once, and a wave of electromagnetic energy erupted from his body. The soldiers' weapons and armor systems failed instantly, leaving them standing in the alley, wearing useless metal shells. Their stealth devices flickered and died, revealing 2 more soldiers who had been hiding nearby. Impossible, the lead soldier gasped. Dragons don't have defensive capabilities. Enslaved dragons don't, Uzra replied coldly. But I was never properly broken. The soldiers retreated quickly, leaving behind their disabled equipment. Marcus realized that their quiet life of repairing electronics was probably over. If the Veltar were willing to send armed soldiers to Earth to reclaim Uzra, then other threats would surely follow. What happens now? Marcus asked. Uzra looked at him with those intelligent purple eyes, and Marcus saw determination there that matched his own. Now we stop running and start fighting back. There are others like me scattered across the galaxy, and they deserve to be free. But first we need to get off this planet before more soldiers arrive. Marcus nodded and began planning their escape. He had found something worth fighting for again. Marcus packed his few belongings, while Uzra worked on something in the corner of the apartment. The dragon had been busy for hours connecting wires and components from the disabled Veltar equipment to Marcus's old electronics. Sparks flew occasionally, and the air smelled of heated metal and ozone. What exactly are you building over there? A communication device that can reach beyond your planet's atmosphere, Uzra replied without looking up from his work. If we're going to leave Earth, we need a way to contact allies and find safe passage through space. Marcus had never imagined he would be planning to leave his home planet, but staying was no longer an option. Word of the attack had spread quickly through government channels, and military officials were already asking questions about Marcus's connection to advanced alien technology. Soon they would come looking for answers he could not provide without putting Uzra in danger. Do we have allies out there? Uzra's crystalline fingers paused in their delicate work, and his purple eyes met Marcus's gaze. There are others like me scattered across the galaxy. Most are still enslaved, but some have found ways to hide among the free populations of various worlds. They've been waiting for someone who could unite them and give them hope. And you think I'm that someone? I think you're the first person in 1,000 years who has treated me as an equal rather than property or curiosity. That makes you special in ways you don't understand yet. The communication device began to emit a low humming sound, and Uzra's skin glowed brighter as he interfaced with its crystalline components. Marcus watched as symbols and data streams appeared on improvised displays throughout the apartment. I'm accessing the underground network now. There are encrypted channels that free dragons use to share information and coordinate activities. Messages began flowing across the screens in languages Marcus could not read. Uzra translated important ones while continuing to work on establishing secure connections to distant worlds. There's a group of liberated dragons operating from a hidden base in the Outer Rim territories. They've been planning rescue missions for years, but they lack the resources and coordination to attempt anything large-scale. What kind of resources do they need? Ships mostly, and weapons. The enslaving races have powerful fleets and advanced technology. Dragons are individually strong, but we've never been warriors by nature. We need allies who understand combat and tactics. Marcus realized that his military experience might be more valuable than he had imagined. The skills he had learned during humanity's first interstellar war could be applied to liberating enslaved dragons across the galaxy. I know something about military strategy and small unit tactics. Maybe I can help them plan more effective operations. Uzra turned from his work and studied Marcus with an expression that might have been hope. You would do that? Risk your life to help creatures you barely know. You're not the only one who's been enslaved, Uzra. I've spent 2 years trapped by my own memories and circumstances. Maybe fighting for someone else's freedom will help me find my own. The communication device finally established contact with the Dragon Resistance Network. A holographic image appeared showing an ancient dragon whose crystalline skin had taken on a deep golden color with age. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. I am Keth, leader of the Freescale Alliance. Uzra has told us much about you, Marcus Cole. We welcome any who would stand with us against oppression. Marcus found himself speaking to beings from dozens of different worlds. Some were dragons like Azra, while others were members of species he had never heard of. All had been touched by the systematic enslavement and exploitation that the major galactic powers use to maintain their dominance. The situation is worse than we initially believed. Ket explained as tactical displays showed the locations of dragon breeding facilities and work camps throughout known space. The Veltar Empire alone holds over 10,000 of our people in bondage. The other powers have similar numbers. Marcus studied the displays and began to understand the scope of what they were facing. This was not just about freeing individual dragons, but about dismantling an entire system of exploitation that had existed for millennia. We need to start small and build momentum. Large-scale attacks will just bring down the full force of their military on us before we're ready. Agreed. We have identified several small facilities that house only a few dozen dragons each. Success there could provide us with additional allies and demonstrate that liberation is possible. Over the following days, Marcus worked with the Resistance Network to plan their first mission. They would target a research facility on a remote world where captured dragons were being studied for ways to make their enslavement more efficient. The irony of using dragon intelligence to perfect their own bondage was not lost on anyone involved. The challenge was getting to the facility without being detected by government forces. Marcus and Uzra needed transportation off Earth, but every commercial flight was monitored and military vessels were out of the question. There might be another option, Uzra said while reviewing shipping schedules. Your planet has several corporations that transport cargo to mining operations in other solar systems. If we could stow away on one of those ships, we might reach the outer rim without attracting attention. Marcus used his remaining money to purchase supplies, while Uzra modified their equipment to be more portable. They had decided to steal a cargo hauler from the spaceport outside the city, but first they needed to gather intelligence about security procedures and flight schedules. The spaceport was heavily guarded, but Marcus's military identification still granted him access to certain areas. He spent 2 days observing operations and identifying a ship that would best serve their needs. A massive cargo hauler called the Iron Dreams was scheduled to depart for the mining colonies in 3 days. The ship has minimal crew and most of the cargo space is automated, Marcus reported to Uzra. If we can get aboard during the loading process, we should be able to hide until they reach deep space. What about oxygen and food for the journey? The cargo holds are pressurized and heated for sensitive equipment. There are emergency supplies stored throughout the ship for crew safety. It won't be comfortable, but we can survive the trip. The night before their planned departure, government agents surrounded Marcus's apartment building. They came in unmarked vehicles and set up a perimeter that looked professional and thorough. Marcus watched from his window as teams positioned themselves at all the exits. They're not taking any chances this time, he told Uzra, who was calmly finishing preparations for their escape. Neither are we. I've been modifying our equipment to create a diversion when we need it. Uzra had connected the building's electrical system to several devices that would overload transformers and create a power outage affecting several city blocks. In the confusion, they could slip out through the basement and make their way to the spaceport through maintenance tunnels. Are you ready for this? Marcus asked as they prepared to leave everything behind. I've been ready for centuries. The question is whether you're prepared for what comes next. Once we start down this path, there will be no going back to your quiet life on Earth. Marcus thought about his empty apartment and unpaid bills. He considered the nightmares that still woke him most nights and the sense of purposelessness that had consumed him since leaving the military. Then he looked at Uzra, who had become the closest thing to a true friend he had known in years. I stopped having a quiet life the day you walked into it. Let's go free some dragons. Uzra activated the power overload, and the lights went out across half the city. Emergency sirens began wailing as backup systems failed and traffic signals went dark. In the chaos, Marcus and Uzra slipped out of the building and disappeared into maintenance tunnels beneath the streets. The journey to the spaceport took 3 hours through a maze of service passages and storm drains. They emerged near the cargo loading area just as the Iron Dreams was taking on its final shipments. Security was lighter than usual due to personnel being diverted to deal with the power crisis in the city. "There's our window," Marcus whispered as loading crews took a break between cargo containers. They slipped aboard the massive ship and found hiding spots in a storage bay filled with mining equipment. The space was cramped and uncomfortable, but it would keep them hidden for the journey ahead. As the Iron Dreams lifted off from Earth, Marcus felt a mixture of fear and excitement that he had not experienced since his military days. He was leaving behind everything familiar to fight for a cause that most humans had never heard of. But for the first time in years, he felt like his life had genuine purpose. "What happens when we reach the Outer Rim?" he asked Azra as they settled in for the long journey. "We find the Freescale Alliance and begin planning our first rescue mission. After that, we keep fighting until every dragon in the galaxy is free or we die trying." Marcus nodded in the darkness. He had found his war again, and this time he was fighting for something that truly mattered. The ship accelerated into hyperspace, carrying them toward their destiny among the stars. Behind them, Earth grew smaller until it was just another point of light in the vast cosmos. Ahead lay danger and uncertainty, but also the possibility of making a difference that could echo across the galaxy. Marcus closed his eyes, and for the first time in months, he slept without nightmares. His dreams were filled with images of crystalline dragons flying free among the stars. The mining station at Kepler's Edge looked like a rusty metal flower blooming in the darkness of space. Marcus watched through a small porthole as the Iron Dreams approached a massive structure that served as a supply hub for dozens of mining operations throughout the Outer Rim territories. This was where he and Azra would leave the cargo ship and make contact with the Freescale Alliance. The station has over 50,000 inhabitants from dozens of different species, Azra explained while monitoring communications traffic. It's one of the few places in the galaxy where dragons can move freely without attracting immediate attention. Marcus had spent a 3-week journey learning everything he could about galactic politics and the complex web of alliances that kept the major powers in control. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Species like the Veltar maintained their dominance not through superior technology or military strength, but through systematic exploitation of more advanced races like the dragons. How long has this been going on? The current system has existed for about 12,000 years, but the exploitation goes back much further. My people were among the first to develop faster than light travel and advanced computing systems. Instead of using these gifts to explore and create, we became targets for species that saw us as resources to be harvested. The docking process took several hours, and Marcus used the time to prepare their equipment and plan their next moves. They had enough supplies to last for weeks, but no local currency and no legal identification that would work this far from Earth. "Ket's people will meet us at Docking Bay 94, Azra said while checking their communication device. "From there we'll be taken to a safe house where we can plan our first mission." Marcus felt nervous about meeting the Dragon Resistance leaders face to face. During their conversations over the communication network, they had seemed competent and determined, but he wondered how they would react to actually working with a human in person. The Iron Dreams completed its docking sequence, and cargo operations began immediately. Marcus and Azra waited until the loading crews were distracted before slipping out of their hiding place and making their way to the specified meeting point. Docking Bay 94 was smaller than the main cargo areas and filled with ships that looked like they had seen better days. Marcus recognized several design types from his military service, but most were older models that had been heavily modified for smuggling or other illegal activities. A figure emerged from the shadows near one of the ships, and Marcus saw his first free dragon other than Azra. The creature was smaller and darker than his companion, with crystalline skin that looked almost black in the dim lighting. When she spoke, her voice carried the same perfect human accent that had surprised him when he first met Azra. "I am Vale, and I speak for Keth in this sector. You are Marcus Cole the human who has chosen to stand with us." "That's right. This is quite a place you have here." Vale gestured for them to follow her toward a concealed entrance in the station's superstructure. The passage beyond was narrow and clearly designed to be hidden from station security. "Kepler's Edge serves our purposes because it exists in a legal gray area that none of the major powers want to control directly. As long as the mining operations continue to produce profits, everyone pretends not to notice what else happens here." The safe house was built into an abandoned section of the station that had been sealed off after a reactor leaked decades earlier. The radiation levels were safe now, but the area remained officially condemned, which kept casual visitors away. Marcus was amazed by what he found inside. The dragons had converted the empty spaces into a sophisticated command center, complete with holographic displays showing tactical information from across the galaxy. A dozen dragons of various sizes and colors worked at different stations, while others rested in alcoves carved into the metal walls. Keth emerged from a central chamber, and Marcus got his first close look at the ancient dragon leader. Her golden crystalline skin seemed to glow with its own internal light, and her purple eyes held depths of experience that made him feel very young and inexperienced. "Welcome to our hidden war, Marcus Cole. I hope you are prepared for what we must ask of you." The tactical briefing that followed opened Marcus's eyes to the true scope of the Dragon Liberation Movement. They had identified over 300 facilities across 50 different worlds, where dragons were being held in various forms of bondage. Some were breeding centers where young dragons were conditioned for slavery, while others were research labs or industrial facilities. "We have been conducting small-scale rescue operations for decades, but our success rate is limited by lack of coordination and poor intelligence gathering," Keth explained while showing Marcus detailed plans of their target facilities. "Your military experience could help us plan more effective missions." Marcus studied the intelligence reports and tactical assessments. The dragons were clearly intelligent and dedicated, but their approach to military operations was amateur at best. They favored direct assaults that relied on their natural defensive abilities rather than stealth or misdirection. "You're fighting like dragons instead of like soldiers," he told them. "Your enemies expect you to be strong and tough, so they plan their defenses accordingly. What they don't expect is subtlety and coordination." He spent the next several days working with the Resistance leadership to develop new tactical approaches. Instead of frontal attacks on heavily defended facilities, they would use infiltration and sabotage to create confusion before extracting the prisoners. "The key is making them think they're dealing with technical failures or internal problems rather than organized attacks," Marcus explained while outlining a plan to hit 3 facilities simultaneously. "If we can free the dragons without the authorities realizing they're under coordinated assault, we can be gone before reinforcements arrive." Their first target was a research facility on a world called Terminus 5, where captured dragons were being studied to understand how their crystalline biology interfaced with technology. The intelligence reports indicated that only 40 dragons were being held there, but the research being conducted was crucial to the enemy's long-term plans for controlling the species. Marcus led a team of 6 dragons in a modified cargo ship that had been equipped with stealth systems stolen from various military sources. The journey to Terminus 5 took 2 weeks, during which time Marcus trained his team in human military tactics and coordination techniques. "Remember that surprise is our greatest advantage," he told them repeatedly. "The moment they realize we're there and force the mission becomes 10 times more difficult." Uzra served as the team's technical specialist, using his abilities to interface with the facility security systems and create the electronic failures that would cover their infiltration. The other team members were all experienced fighters, but none had worked as part of a coordinated unit before. The research facility was built into the side of a mountain and heavily fortified against direct attack. But Marcus had identified weaknesses in their personnel security and waste disposal systems that would allow a small team to penetrate the outer defenses undetected. "The shift change happens at midnight local time," Marcus explained as they reviewed their final approach plan. "That gives us a 20-minute window when guard posts are undermanned and security cameras are cycling through diagnostic routines." The infiltration went exactly as planned until they reached the inner chambers where the dragons were being held. What Marcus found there made him angrier than anything he had experienced during the war against the Veltar Empire. The captured dragons were not just imprisoned, but had been surgically modified with devices that suppressed their intelligence and independent thought. Many were barely conscious, and those who could still think clearly were in obvious pain from the invasive procedures they had endured. "This is worse than slavery," Uzra said as he worked to disable control devices. "They're trying to turn us into biological machines." Marcus helped coordinate the evacuation while his team dealt with facility security forces that had finally realized what was happening. The dragons they rescued were weak and disoriented, but their natural defensive abilities were still intact once the suppression devices were removed. "Can you walk?" Marcus asked a young dragon whose crystalline skin had been scarred by surgical procedures. "I think so. Who are you? Are you really here to help us? We're here to take you home. Can you help the others who are too weak to move on their own?" The escape was more difficult than the infiltration because they now had 40 rescued prisoners to transport. Some were too weak to move quickly, and others were still recovering from the effects of the suppression devices. Marcus had to make several difficult decisions about how to get everyone to safety. During the evacuation, one of the younger dragons was hit by enemy fire and fell badly wounded. Marcus moved to help him, but found himself surrounded by facility guards who had cut off his retreat route. "Leave me and get the others to safety," the wounded dragon gasped. "Not happening. We don't leave anyone behind." Marcus fought his way through the guards using tactics he had learned during his military service, but took several serious injuries in the process. By the time Uzra reached him, Marcus was bleeding heavily and barely conscious. "I'm fine," Marcus insisted, even though he clearly was not. "Just get everyone to the ship." Uzra made a decision that would change both their lives forever. Instead of just helping Marcus reach safety, he opened a direct mental connection between them and began sharing his life force to keep the human alive. The process was irreversible once started, and Marcus felt Uzra's consciousness merging with his own. Suddenly, he could see through the dragon's eyes and understand technology in ways that no human had ever experienced before. At the same time, Uzra gained access to Marcus's military knowledge and tactical instincts. "What did you do?" Marcus asked as they reached the ship. "I bonded us permanently. Your lifespan is now linked to mine, and we share thoughts and abilities. I could not let you die for our cause." Marcus realized that he was no longer entirely human, but he felt more complete than he had ever been in his life. The rescue mission had been a success, and they had proven that coordinated attacks could work against the enslaving powers. But their success had also attracted the attention of every government in the galaxy, and massive fleets were already being assembled to hunt them down. Marcus woke up 3 days later feeling like his mind had been rebuilt from the inside out. The mental bond with Uzra had given him access to thousands of years of dragon knowledge and technology that no human had ever possessed. He could understand the mathematics behind faster-than-light travel and see patterns in quantum mechanics that would have taken human scientists decades to discover. "How do you feel?" Uzra asked from his position beside the medical bed, where Marcus had been recovering. "Different. I can hear your thoughts and see things through your perspective. Is this permanent?" "Yes. Our life forces are now connected, which means we share the same lifespan and many of the same abilities. You will live as long as I do, and I will benefit from your human intuition and tactical thinking." Marcus sat up slowly and realized that his old war injuries no longer caused him pain. The bond had not only connected their minds, but had somehow healed his damaged body using dragon regenerative abilities. Keth entered the medical chamber, carrying reports from across the galaxy. Her expression was serious, and Marcus could tell that their successful rescue mission had created complications. The major powers have formed an alliance to deal with what they call the Dragon Rebellion. They are calling you the Dragon Commander Marcus and placing a massive bounty on your capture. Marcus looked at the intelligence reports showing military buildups on dozens of worlds. The Veltar Empire had joined forces with 3 other major species to create the largest military alliance in galactic history. Their goal was simple: crush the Dragon Liberation Movement before it could spread other enslaved species. "How long do we have before they find us?" "Days at most. Our hidden bases are secure, but they are deploying sensor networks that will eventually locate us. We need to act quickly if we want to free more of our people before the full weight of their military comes down on us." Marcus studied tactical displays showing the locations of major dragon holding facilities throughout known space. There were hundreds of such places, but one stood out as being more important than all the others combined. "What's this facility at the galactic core?" Uzra's mind touched his through their bond, and Marcus suddenly understood what he was looking at. The massive station orbiting the galaxy's central black hole was not just a prison, but a control center for the entire dragon enslavement system. That's where they keep the genetic control devices that suppress dragon intelligence across the galaxy. Every dragon born in captivity is affected by signals broadcast from that station. If we could destroy it, millions of our people would suddenly regain their full mental abilities. Marcus realized they were looking at the key to the entire war. The enslaving races maintain control, not through superior numbers or technology, but through systematic suppression of dragon intelligence. Remove that suppression, and the balance of power in the galaxy would shift overnight. We need to get inside that station and destroy the control systems. Impossible, Keth replied. The station is protected by the largest fleet in the galaxy and defended by automated systems that would destroy any attacking force long before they reach the target. Marcus smiled, and Marcus could feel Uzra's excitement through their mental connection. His human tactical thinking, combined with dragon technological knowledge, was already formulating a plan that neither species could have conceived alone. We don't attack the station. We infiltrate it by pretending to be prisoners being delivered for processing. Over the next 48 hours, Marcus worked with the Resistance leadership to develop the most audacious plan in military history. They would use captured enemy ships to transport a strike team directly into the heart of the Galactic Control Station, disguised as a routine prisoner transfer. The beauty of this approach is that they expect to receive dragon prisoners regularly, Marcus explained while reviewing security protocols. Their own procedures will get us inside their defenses. The strike team consisted of Marcus and 12 of the most experienced dragon fighters in the Resistance. They would pretend to be unconscious prisoners, while actually being fully alert and ready for combat. Once inside the station, they would have perhaps an hour to locate and destroy the control systems before security forces overwhelmed them. This is essentially a suicide mission, Vale pointed out during the final planning session. Even if we succeed in destroying the controls, we will almost certainly be killed before we can escape. Marcus looked around the room at dragons who had already sacrificed everything for the chance of freedom. These beings had spent their entire lives as slaves and were willing to die for possibility that future generations might live free. Sometimes the most important victories require the ultimate sacrifice. If we can free millions of dragons, the cost will be worth it. The journey to the galactic core took 2 weeks in a stolen Veltar military transport. Marcus and his team spent the time studying detailed plans of the station and practicing their assault tactics in the ship's cargo hold. Every dragon had been fitted with devices that would simulate the effects of neural suppression while allowing them to remain fully conscious. Remember that once we begin the attack, there will be no retreat, Marcus told them as they approached their target. We either succeed completely or we die trying. The control station was larger than Marcus had imagined. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers in all directions and housed over 1 million inhabitants from dozens of different species. The technological complexity was staggering even to minds enhanced by dragon knowledge. The central control chamber is located in the core section. Uzra explained through their mental bond. We'll need to fight our way through at least 30 levels of security to reach it. The prisoner transfer proceeded exactly as planned with station security, treating them as routine cargo rather than a potential threat. Marcus and his team were transported to a holding facility in the outer rings, where they would supposedly be processed for assignment to various work details. Now we find out if our intelligence about their security procedures was accurate. Marcus thought of Uzra as they were loaded onto an internal transport system. The moment they were alone, Marcus gave the signal, and 12 dragons shed their restraints and prepared for battle. Their crystalline skin began glowing with stored energy, and Marcus could feel their determination through the mental network that connected all free dragons. The assault on the control center was unlike anything Marcus had experienced during his military career. They fought their way through corridors filled with automated defenses and security forces from multiple species. Dragon defensive abilities proved crucial as energy weapons and projectiles bounced harmlessly off their crystalline hides. The control room is just ahead, Uzra announced as they blasted to the final security barrier. What they found inside was both horrifying and magnificent. The chamber contained a massive crystalline matrix that pulsed with dark energy. Marcus realized he was looking at the enslaved consciousness of an ancient dragon that had been forced to maintain the neural suppression network for thousands of years. "Free me," the imprisoned consciousness whispered directly into Marcus's mind. "I have been trapped here since the system was first built. They used my own abilities to enslave my people. Marcus approached the crystalline prison while his team held off waves of security forces trying to retake the control room. He could see the tortured awareness trapped within the matrix and knew that destroying the system would also end this ancient dragon's suffering. Uzra, I need your help to break the containment field. Together they interface with the control systems using their combined human intuition and dragon technological knowledge. The imprisoned consciousness guided them through complex shutdown procedures while alarms screamed throughout the station. Warning: neural suppression network failure imminent. Automated voices announced as critical systems began shutting down. Marcus felt the moment when the suppression field collapsed. Across the galaxy, millions of dragons suddenly regained their full intelligence and awareness. The effect was immediate and dramatic as enslaved dragons on thousands of worlds began to understand their true situation for the first time. It's done, Marcus said as the ancient dragon's consciousness finally found peace in death. Every dragon in the galaxy is now free to think and choose for themselves. The escape from the control station was impossible as Marcus had known it would be. His strike team fought valiantly but were eventually overwhelmed by superior numbers. As he fell wounded, Marcus felt satisfaction, knowing that their sacrifice had freed an entire species from bondage. But death did not come. Instead, Marcus found himself waking up in a medical facility, surrounded by dragons whose crystalline skin bore the scars of recent battles. Through his bond with Uzra, he learned that their success had triggered the largest slave rebellion in galactic history. Millions of dragons across the galaxy rose up simultaneously once the suppression network failed, Uzra explained. The enslaving powers were completely unprepared for a coordinated resistance on such a scale. The war that followed lasted 3 years and reshaped the entire political structure of the galaxy. Marcus found himself leading not just dragons, but representatives from dozens of previously enslaved species who saw the dragon liberation as proof that freedom was possible. The final battle took place above Earth itself when the Allied fleets of the former slave powers attempted to destroy humanity as punishment for producing the Dragon Commander. But they found Earth defended not just by human forces, but by thousands of free dragons who had chosen to stand with their liberators. This is where it all began, Marcus said to Uzra as they watched the enemy fleet retreat in defeat. A disabled veteran and an unwanted dragon inheritance. And this is where it ends, Uzra replied, with the galaxy finally learning that freedom is not something to be granted by the powerful, but something to be claimed by the brave. Marcus established a new world where humans and dragons worked together as equals. It became a symbol of what the galaxy could become when different species chose cooperation over domination. The former slave powers were forced to adapt to a new reality where their victims had become their equals. In his final years, Marcus often reflected on how a simple act of kindness during wartime had led to the liberation of an entire galaxy. He had started as a broken veteran with nothing to lose and ended as a catalyst for the greatest change in galactic history. The universe was vast and full of wonders that neither humans nor dragons could explore alone, but together they could reach for the stars.